Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have an exciting video. We're doing a tier list video with my good friend Justin as we gear up to the World Championships. So, before we get into it, Justin, how has your season been going so far? What decks are you looking at for Worlds this year?
Hey, so first of all, as a quick introduction, my name's Justin Kempley, the UK London Pokemon players. How's my season going? So, pretty good, honestly. I finished top fourth place in the UK standings this year. I think I was something like 33rd, 34th in Europe, and therefore got the Worlds invite. It's my second year in a row getting an invite. Um, and yeah, I think it's been an interesting season. It's been very tough. It's been very competitive, and I think I'm really excited for Worlds in the next week and sort of seeing where things go from there.
Okay. So, are there any decks right now which you're thinking, which you want to start off by looking at, which is interesting?
Yeah, so I think we were chatting a little bit before, and from my point of view, the most interesting one to sort of start with is probably Gholdengo. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is the deck that, in my opinion, has gained the most from Black Bolt, White Flare. Genesect is really significant. Balloon is really significant. So I always, whenever I'm looking at a format that has a new set introduced, the first question I ask is what gains the most, and I think that's a good place to start.
So, personally, I think it is definitely a very good deck right now, Worlds, but I don't know if it is going to be. It's going to have a huge target on its back. If we look at more recent limitless results, there is a lot of like counter decks for this one. So I think it's a good deck, but could we say it could be A or B? 'Cause I'm leaning towards B, but I know it's an A deck, but I think it's a B play for Worlds.
I see what you mean in terms of the difference. I think I would lean towards A myself, and we can have it out or split the difference on these as they go along. A couple of things like I think, yeah, it's got a target on its back. It's probably going to be in the five most played. I think some of the hype has died down a little bit, and it's definitely one of those decks where it is easily countered, or at the least it can be easily countered. So I would expect top players going to Worlds to have a very clear game plan against Gholdengo. So it's definitely not S tier, but I think the strength of what it gains in terms of its onboard draw power, in terms of its ability to spike damage, to not leave damage on an opponent's board in a Monkey Dory format is really important as well. Um, so yeah, I'm happy to sort of split the difference and let you make the call on that,
I
Charlie, as
think
this is your tier list.
I think it is an A tier deck. I think for the players who have that target on the back, like you have to know what your game plan is going to be against the Dragapult Dusknoir, against Aether's Typhlosion, the Charizards, the decks which you can have a pretty tough time to. I think it will definitely be. It could even be not much for Drago and be out of nowhere be a 15% at Wells. I don't think we could see that, but I think it could be that 10%. It's very very powerful. I think definitely going to be another deck which is doing really well.
And thematically, I think it's one of those decks where it's got a good matchups into, say, Gardevoir, for example, and like good into the top of the format. It does have some really polarized matchups. There are some, if you see a Crustle, for example, it gets really, really dicey. Cornerstone Ogre is starting to sharpen some things like Raging Bolt. So it's kind of a question of on the day itself, where will we be in the hype cycle? In the abstract, though, it feels like an A tier to me.
Yeah. The number one, which I think is straight up probably you agree for S tier, is Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir is such an incredible deck right now. I think it has gained against the two user split, you get the Jellicent build, but I think Team of Evolution and just the raw strength about the players in the world have been playing Gardevoir for such a long time. I think the regular build of Gardevoir has a little bit of an edge over the Jellicent one. You actually hit a big sort of damage output and not rely on something like a cheese pair of item lock. But I do think Gardevoir is that S tier deck.
Yep, I completely agree on that. I think for me, an S tier deck is something that um, represents both skill expression and having answers to everything and a game plan into everything. I think God of War clearly has that. Everything from, you know, swinging for knockouts, for setting up Evo plays, which are becoming more common in God of War at the moment, and even just having a mind bend just to confuse and just, if you really are struggling, there's even that as a panic play. So you put it all together, and there's a reason it's been at the top of the format for so long. I don't think it gains a lot with the new set, which is interesting that it's sort of still there in S tier, but hey, it did well at NAIC. Why isn't it going to do well at once?
Exactly. And then to go into counter thing for Gardevoir Jellicent build, would you say that could be 8 up in the S, or do you think it'd be A or B tier? Which
So
one do you think?
In my opinion, I'm skewing a little bit lower. I think I would sort of throw B, possibly C. There's room to refine it. Like we saw for the Japan Championships, it had a couple of, I think, what, 16s, top
But it's definitely got
32s,
one top eight as well.
on top eight, which is pretty good. On paper, it looks like it's so obviously going to be good, but actually having tested a little bit, it's pretty clunky. It's a lot of space. If you're looking to go for a sort of thicker Jellicent line, 2-2, maybe 3-2, maybe you prioritize going first, so you got a better chance of being able to pivot and retreat into the Frillish. It's been interesting that Frillish has actually been quite an important
It's a
card.
very good card for it.
Yeah, and like a version of the item block that can't be undone with a single boss's orders. So I could almost see a world in which a Frillish sneaks into the Gardevoir that you've got up in S tier at the moment, but without having the Jellicent. It's probably not what we would expect for Argon. Really would be too well.
Yes, the another one which is having a lot of hype and only really gained one new card, which is Grimmsnarl Froslass. This deck had a lot of hype in when into rivals. It definitely kind of had that moment. It got that top eight placement in NEIC. It did incredibly well at Japan Championships. I think it was the second most played deck. I think in a format which is very well in some Gardevoir matchups, this could be an A tier for the tournament. It is very, very strong, especially with the four Monkey Dories. And the air balloon, which is kind of coming to me, so switching out is great. But I think you just need to have that churro so you're not scared by any Maractus plays or something like stalling, where I've had a few games for this deck where you just need that one little thing like so pick it up, you can reset your Grimmsnarls, you can do all that. So I think it is in that A tier, and that spreading damage counter is just having a board with three Monkey Dories, doing that additional 90 more damage is just incredibly strong. So that's why I'm kind of going with the A tier for it.
I'm honestly inclined to agree. I think, I mean, its weaknesses we kind of know at this point. It's consistency. Sometimes it's having sort of a game plan if someone is able to hit the delete button and get the big knockout on Grimmsnarl, or um, it can feel a little bit tricky to sort of set up and get into games sometimes with the length of on board draw and so on.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it does similar things to Gardevoir in terms of trapping damage, in terms of monkey dory board states, and crucially, it has weakness against them. So even if you don't ever put the Froslass down in that matchup, you're still favored into it. If you are favored into the S tier deck in the format, it's got to be a good place to be.
Yeah. Another deck which dominated Japan Championships, which has been dominating us ever since it got the reveal of the Ogapon is unlocking Raging Bolt. Where do you place that? Do you think that is an S tier? Or do you think it could be A or even go down to B for
Um,
this tournament?
if I'm throwing it out, I'm probably more optimistic on Raging Bolt than most. I'm probably looking at an A tier. Yeah, I think it's a deck that sort of is quite cyclical, but actually with the Baby Raging Bolt becoming more prominent, the players getting quite efficient in using it, it's given the deck a bit of a fresh lease of life, and that you can represent almost sometimes you can do a one prize board state or near a one prize board state early on. And it really puts pressure on opponents to be able to pick out the thing that you want to knock out more easily. That energy stays on the Raging Bolt as well, so you can repeat it again and again and again. Shaman is in the format, and Shaman is something that Froslass is probably playing more than Gardevoir is at the moment. Um, so it has felt a little bit weaker, but I think going into Worlds, it has a lot of similar qualities to Gholdengo. I would say Bolt and Gholdengo both have the same strength in that they don't leave damage on the opponent's board to be out over, but actually the same weakness in that if you fall behind, it's really hard to find the way to come back.
Yeah. I think my thing about Rage Bolt, I do prefer the non like Talbot build. It did the best in Japan Championships. I think it has a very fast, aggressive play that sometimes you really need instead of sacrificing a couple boards to get that the Hutus into Noctowls, which crucially take up the bench space, which could be your second new or the squad ability that you desperately need to draw through the deck. So I'm more leaning towards if I was to be going to that one, playing the non Owls or Raging Bolt. I just think in my eyes it just seems a bit of a stronger play for Worlds. But there's lots of people who love the owl build, who knows how powerful it is, just getting any two trainer cards.
Yeah, and I think even though look, obviously the non-out build won in Japan, it's I can't get away from the fact that those owls are incredibly strong. We can see how the Fan Rotom is something that's a really versatile card and attacker to be using early on. And I think that extra layer of complexity and being able to craft a play is something that's been really important for the deck. So I lean more towards that, but I can definitely see the strength of the more direct version.
Now, we're going on my favorite deck, well, nearly my favorite deck, Dragapult. That deck that I've played a lot, and there are three different variants, but I want to throw about looking at the straight Pult, the one which Todd Ratcliffe played to get top 4 at NYC and became quite a more popular way with the Luminous Energy, Double Monkey Dory, Bloodless Luna, High Chiro account. I know we put a lot of these decks are in like the A or S tier or something like that. I do think Dragapult, this version is A tier. I think it's very strong. I would say arguably it could be probably here. I still think Gholdengo is maybe a little bit better right now. But I think what Dragapult has to offer has one of the best attacks in the game, has so many versatility routes that can go with this one. And going having access now to the 4 Luminous Energy, you now don't need to worry about your energy attachment at time. Same thing with Upper Neo Energy, or you can go back to Sparkling Crystal, or you can just play any A spec. This works well with this straight pole. So that's why I think it's the A tier one. There are 2 other variants we talk about, but I think that one is the A tier.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would actually speak up for Pult Dusknoir in particular, and we can talk about that. I
Yeah.
think that brings some other abilities to the deck. Um, yeah, I think the NAIC list for Pult is absolutely it's so much fun to play. 7 forms of Gust in the deck, and it almost feels like a Maractus deck sometimes
It
when you
does.
actually play it. What's interesting is that this is a tier list where we're actually not looking at control in the conventional sense, and actually Dragapult has some control elements to it, both with the retreat clock through Maractus and sort of playing out a longer, more complicated game. And I'm sort of just float the possibility of we've seen cards in the new set like LGN that moves energy across from one Pokemon to another with a Psychic. And if I was particularly good at Pult, which I'm not, but if I was somebody who was looking to really cook a deck at the moment, I would say bringing some of those control elements in that play to the longer game, that play to pushing some of the opponent's resources just a little bit thinner. And I'm thinking about Gholdengo opponents here. You can imagine LGM, you can imagine Eri finding its way into some lists as well to sort of pick off 2 superior energy retrievals. It's the deck that I think has the most surprise
Yeah.
within it, and I'd be really interested to see what players have that I've not expected at this point.
Then going on to what I think, which is S tier, is Dragapult Dusknoir. I think it is just has an answer to everything. It has been up there with Gardevoir literally this entire year as being one of those 2 things for S tier. I think now with Gholdengo becoming so popular, where Dusknoir becomes even greater. Because now one of the tricky things with the Gholdengo is you have to make sure that 6 damage counter sticks on that Gholdengo to get that full price KO. But now with the Monkey Dories, with the return of Picnic Basket, heck, we've seen some people play like the Moonlit Hits Hill,
Mm.
even more healing factor for Gholdengo. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards the Dust one becomes that greater play, taking those 3 prize card turns, which is exactly what Dragapult likes to go to offer. Yes, you give your opponent your prize card, but I think it's how Dragapult is going to stay relevant. That's how it's going to be the best one right now with Dust Noir, making it an S tier play.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. I think somewhere between it'll probably be at the top of A tier for me. So maybe we land in S tier for this one as a compromise. But look, you played it a lot this past year. I know it's one of your favorite decks. I know it's something that you pilot very well. For me, one of the strengths is that we've seen that early game sort of Badoo opening play out more turns, get more cloak draw, and actually the ability to combine that with being able to take some selective knockouts. So you keep your lock and you're able to take a knockout with your Dusknoir line. It is an incredibly powerful ability, and it's a way to make sure that that slow opening works in your favor. I think it's got a little bit more to it than the straight Pulse in this tournament. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then going with this one, the last Dragapult one, but not the last Charizard one, Dragapult Charizard. Where would you rank that for this tournament?
We are skewing a little bit high.
I know I've seen that now. There's a lot in the
No, I don't think we're going to put it in A tier.
say B tier.
Yeah, honestly, and it's got a star with that. It's got a strengths. There's a huge power spike for the end game that you have with Charizard being able to swing for big numbers. I think we've seen that Chi has become, and we'll talk about this with regular Zard as well, become a really important card in the list in terms of the Gholdengo matchup, in terms of having a one prize attacker. Um, I'm not quite sort of. I think there's still enough there to pick apart from an opponent's point of view because more cards have to be taken up with the Pokemon line to fit in the Charizard. I think is lacking a little something for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. I just think it's a very pop. People are enjoying playing this one, but I would say it's not the best Dragapult variant. I think it can really struggle sometimes in the room to get that set up.
Yep.
And then going with the last Charizard, do we think this could be B, or do you think it could be C for the play, or do you even go the very skew A list?
I'll let you kick off for this one.
I think part of me, I know it's a very powerful deck, but I think it could be a C play. That might be a bit controversial sort of take for it. I'm not doing that because of it's all skew but I think it can. It's meant to be this very aggressive archetype, and one of the top decks really do hit that very aggressive sort of plays. Froslass, Monkey Dory, with Grimmsnarl can really hinder, I think, Charizard because they can't hit the big one-hit kill potential until Froslass and Grimmsnarl have taken that multiple prize card, and they can make you wait and turn it one for that Devo play. It can struggle against Dragapult at times. Raging Bolt, depending on what build it is, can be very, very aggressive. And Gholdengo can get the first initial sort of head start. Unless Charizard playing the Mixing Belt or stuff like that, that's when I could put this deck a little bit higher. But we're not seeing Mixing Belt played in as much as Charizard. So it's kind of where I put it in that C tier.
Yeah, I think there's a common theme there in that Charizard, like it is a deck. We'll treat this as being a version that doesn't have Dusknoir in it, for example.
Yeah.
It's a deck that your opponent, to some extent, can control your damage output, and that's something that a lot of the decks that we're seeing up in Tier S and Tier A there actually have that ability and the ability to not take knockouts. It's one of the reasons why Pult was so strong going against Zard itself. Um, so yes, I am inclined to agree. I think the only counter to that is that Pidgeot itself is incredibly strong. If you can establish Pidgeot, you have the ability to, it's the classic sort of do whatever you want kind of thing. If an opponent misses a beat on one of their turns, your Pidgeot ensures that you do not miss that beat on one of your turns. So it's always going to be strong. Um, so I wouldn't want to put it lower than C. It would be sort of somewhere in B for me. But again, your tier list, your call.
Yeah. My favorite deck right now, Ethan's Typhlosion. I love it. I will put it in A, but I think it's the top of B tier overall. It has a great Gholdengo matchup. It's an amazing deck because you can be. It's one of the only single prize archetypes which can keep up with them. And so Crustle, I feel like it's just that controlling sort of deck. But Ethan's Typhlosion, it is so strong when it gets a setup, but when it gained that big one hit K potential, finding that brave angle, but you might take a while to set up. You have to make sure you hit all the right pieces and all the stuff in the discard pile. So you might have to get a secret box or go in for Ultra Ball to get rid of your Evening's Adventure, or you might have to hopefully not prize where you have access to your redeemable ticket. So it can struggle to get that set up, but once it's set up, it's an absolute powerhouse and it can go through most of these top decks. But key thing is we see a lot of these decks here, they have ways to take multiple prize cards, whether it be TM Devolution, whether it be Monkey Dory, whether it be Froslass, whether it be Dusknoir, and that is where this deck can really fall flat. That's kind of why I'm putting into B tier. But if you just want to go in there and have an answer to Gholdengo, if it might be 15% of the room, you're going to hit it at least multiple times. So that's where I think the top of B tier, and I would put it in A, but I think it can really struggle against decks like TM Devolution, Dusknoir, and Spread decks, which is pretty much all of A to S.
So I think I definitely agree with you that, my goodness, the format wants and needs to have one prize decks. I am a one prize deck enjoyer myself. Um, I think I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you here, Charlie. I know it's a beloved deck, but for me, I'm just looking at the meta and looking at the skew towards the top. These are all things that exist the capability to take multiple prizes per turn, to dismantle board states, and I think this is the thing. Given that Typhlosion relies so heavily on that sort of thick 4-4-3 line of attackers that actually, if you can do all decks, which a lot of those other decks, it's pretty trivial for them to be able to do that, you can get into real trouble. And even then, sort of looking at the output question, yeah, okay, 280, not bad. You attach the Bangle, that's going to be hitting for 310, which gets you up to Guardian levels. You'd still need the Victini on top of that to be able to hit something like Pulse for a one-hit knockout. It is a lot to ask. Um, and just keeping up that steady flow of attackers is something that can be very challenging. So for me, whilst I enjoy the deck greatly, I think it feels like a C or possibly even a D tier
Oh
on
wow.
me, which at the end of the day, your list, your rules, you get to make the final call on
I
it. But
think it's B, but I think a deck which has had a lot of fun for hype, stuff like that, which could go to D, would just be Toedscruel. I know there'll be a video coming out next week where I was talking, or this week, depending on when this video is. It's fun. It's done something which is impossible, like Rayshen getting nearly to back
mm,
top eights. It's an incredibly well put archetype. It can do incredibly well against Grimmsnarl. It has a very tricky, like, is it 280 or 260 HP?
correct. Now I think it might actually be 270 potentially if I remember
270. So
rightly. Yeah.
it's one of those awkward HP
Yeah.
numbers, which is great. It hits the weakness of Dragapult against Grimmsnarl, but it does have 60 HP basic Pokemon, which Dragapult absolutely eats alive. It does have that sort of it's that good meta, like you can go spread, you can have some fun cheese sort of elements of this deck. But I feel like it can again, like even especially it can struggle to get that big one hit KO at turns, I believe. So you might need a few more cards to add into this one. But I think it could be D, but I could be persuaded to a C tier.
So I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind. So yeah, obviously the 60 HP basics, but also Toedscruel itself has the protection once you have from damage counters, once you have the energies attached to those basics. That does rely on you getting set up and into the game, but the one thing that is great about Toedscruel is between your bug catching sets, between your Squawkabillies and all the other draw that you've got set up for you, you will get into the game. That is a huge strength if you're looking at a pretty long tournaments and you want to be able to play as many games as consistently as possible. I'm a little bit torn on it. I'm sympathetic to that. I think on paper there's this really like you'd look at the smaller Toedscruel, the Slime Mold Colony one, and you think, yeah, okay, that's got to be great against Gholdengo. Actually, you play it in practice, and there's quite a lot of opportunities for them to just knock out it. So you have to have a bit of a chain of, well, I've got my next Toedscruel lined up to be able to recover, to be able to then get it back out. And it's not quite the killer line you'd expect. I think the other thing that's a concern for me is the Gardevoir matchup, where I think the Gardevoir has that ability to take multi-prize turns, multi-knockout turns, and Toedscruel has so much going for it in terms of draw. But at the end of the turn, it is a one knockout deal, and that means that you need to number one scale up your damage to get that knockout. Number two, you have to be taking knockouts almost turn one with the Ogerpons. Very doable. You go second, so on and so forth. But you've just got to be lightning fast. And yeah, you may be a little bit harsh, but I can certainly see the case for it. And I don't think it would be my pick.
Yeah. Another deck which had a lot of sort of hype when it started the format and still kind of been around, but not really as much now, is Flareon. Where would you place that right now? Could you think that could be B, C, or D?
So I'm inclined towards B, possibly even trending C. I think it's got a lot of strong capabilities. A Gholdengo matchup. We know the strength of being able to use Leafeon at the moment, and I think there's a lot of good stuff that it's doing. Things that stand out to me is its matchup into Gardevoir is not fantastic, honestly. Um, I actually quite like the direction that a lot of Flareon players have taken of dropping the Sylveon and pushing a little bit more into an attacking line. It definitely has the tendency to work quite hard as well. Less so in the opening, like yeah, you get your Rotom, you get your Owl set up. It doesn't take much like an Iono to 2-3, something like that. And as the Gardevoir player on the other side of that matchup, I always feel pretty comfortable. Um, So look, I think there's huge potential there. Super hard to pilot. It is a very skill expressive deck, and I really respect it for that. It's something that I've enjoyed playing this year. Um, it wouldn't be my pick for Worlds, partly because of this skew in the format towards Guardy at the top.
Yeah. And one other thing is, again, I think it's a very, very strong deck. It's very powerful, but maybe just not the right time for this in this meta. Now, Joltic Box is a deck which I think is pretty good. And it did gain like Electric. It also now has some of the fun picks that Miraidon can play. Do you think this is a little bit better than Miraidon? Do you think this could be a B tier deck? Or do you think it could be like a C? I'm leaning towards B because it has some good sort of response. Pikachu is an absolute nightmare to get KO'd at times.
Yep, yeah.
Potentially saving you that. So wait, Brave Bangle, chuck it on a Gavancha. You can actually have a response now to the Teal Moss Dragapult to the Serpendipities. So not hitting for weakness. So I think that's a great sort of inclusion as well. So I would put that more into B. I do think it's a little bit better than Miraidon right now. I think the Joltic, just like instantly accelerating the board state, that's where I'm kind of leaning towards this B at B, but maybe like the end of B tier.
For me, I would be throwing it in C tier, I think. A couple of reasons why, and actually, I think like, maybe we can compare this to my ride on. Actually, seeing as you mentioned it, I think that's a good comparison. One of the things that stands out for me with Joltic is it's just that wait to get into the game. The fact that you do need to do a jolting charge to really be able to play it. That's all. So if you go first, you don't get an attack. If you go if then turn two, you attack. Then turn three, you actually start getting into the game. At which point the turbo hands that you might want to have got in might be irrelevant at that point. And look, it makes a lot of sense. It does cool things. For me, it's just a little bit too linear. And a little bit too slow ride on. Obviously, the sort of more conventional, like electric generator model that we've seen before, I actually find that a little bit more attractive. I think that Badoo usage is, a little bit lower. We're going to see some of it in Guardy, but not that much. Yeah, less great into Pulse, which is playing Badoo very heavily and will get the time to be able to build up something. But I think I'd put them both in C tier
You've
potentially.
convinced me now, but
Have I?
yeah, I think the more I feel like it's good, I'll try Miraidon. I think Miraidon has always been that deck. It always starts from Scarlet and Violet. People always try to make this work, and we're now finally seeing it with Electric, with the likes of Air Balloon, with Zekrom. It made Miraidon open up to actually can keep up in the end game because that was something that it absolutely struggled since we said goodbye to him. Pikachu, V, stuff like that. So it feels like old Miraidon, but without what's it called? The Forest Hill Stone.
Yep.
So it's just a little bit weaker, but you could chuck Secret Box, and that's basically like Forest Hill Stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say we've now twisted it a little bit more. It is definitely a C. Both of them are probably C tier decks, but Miraidon I think just has a little bit of edge, so it gets in the game just that bit quicker.
Yeah, and I think let's just talk about it as well. Zekrom, like for both decks, it's on paper an incredible card. It's a big upgrade. It is Charizard's attack, but arguably better in some respects. That is a very powerful thing to have when so many games end up at 2-2 prizes to be able to really reliably close something out with a big swing for 330. I think it is.
Yeah.
The worry for me is relying on that Zekrom Charizard. It is a card in which your opponent can, if they have the means to, like a Guardy, like a Dragapult, they can decide how and when they're taking their prizes. They can get the advantages of being emotionally behind on prizes, and you may never get to hit for that brilliant 330 swing for game. So whilst it is a big upgrade, I think in this meta where we're seeing the Pulps, the Gardevoirs, the Grimstars that we're very familiar with at the top, it's probably not its time to shine just yet.
Yeah. A deck which I feel we can both agree that is E tier is Armarouge. Now, they did gain a significant buff by having Prism Energy instead of Luminous, but at the same time, it's a hindrance. Because if you have that Prism Energy attached to Armarouge, it is a Colorless Energy and not a Fire Energy, because it only unlocks the basic Pokemon. I think it has that nice sort of, it's our first big box deck. Terra Box is definitely kind of coming up a little bit. Obviously, Ho has this amazing end acceleration, but like Joltic, like some other decks, you have an amazing acceleration, but you would need that one extra turn to evolve. And having so many Pokemon, so many different attackers, it can be quite difficult to keep having like two Armarouge without play or two Charcadets to really survive in the first few turns. So I think it is that B-tiered sort of deck. It's a nice, fun one. You could potentially play it. Someone might do it and have fun, but I don't feel you're going to be playing that on Winning Worlds.
Do agree. It's not on the tier list, but frankly, I would rather pick up Terrabox in the older sense that, while Shaman's around and Terrabox was so reliant on just throw out the turn to Wellspring, knockout, and see where it goes from there. I think that's still a more appealing deck and has more immediacy, more ability to bring out those pieces with a Noctowl than Ho-Oh Armarouge, which I gotta be honest, it feels really messy as a list. I'm sort of not quite seeing how it all fits together. I think I would rather have a set of owls to support and get that game going.
I want to leave Crustle to be the last that we talk about. In Zoroark, Crustle's going to be a lot. In Zoroark, I love my owner's Pokemon, as you know on the channel. I'm very torn between this one because it on paper was incredibly powerful with that hitting that damaging for hitting that bench sniping, having now then pivoting completely to mainly being a Monkey Dory with Reshiram as your attacking choice and actually forcing the opponent to attack into you so you could outrage back. So that became very powerful and did get that top 8 at NEIC. It's always done pretty well overall, but I think in this meta game, it may be another D tier or potentially C. I think it obviously hits Gardevoir weakness. It can be very powerful, but can be struggling against the Devo sort of decks. Can really struggle against some decks which really counteracts all this play around that damage output, so it's never hitting them, so you can hit it for weakness. That's where I'm leaning towards. Would you say it could be a C or D tier? Or would you even go higher?
I've got to say, this is probably the first pick where I'm much more optimistic than you are, Charlie. One of the reasons why I think it's pretty strong at back, like you said, the obvious one, Gardevoir. I think one of the reasons why it dipped in play was Shaman coming into the format with Journey Together. It's actually quite striking that Shaman's play rate is definitely lower than it was at NAIC, for example. Below cutting it, I think Guardia has a good reason to cut it because we want our energy attachments to be used for Monkey Dory every single turn if we can, our attachment from hand, and having to use it to manually retreat a Shaman can actually be quite impactful if someone just wants to cheaply dust it up and just leave it there to buy a turn. So I think it's quite striking that Shaman's dropping. We've seen people run Zoroark with no Grantian 90-90 split. I think there's more room for it to come back now that we've had that go. Maybe it focuses a little bit less on the I can't remember the name of the energy, but the triple energy,
Reversal
energy. Maybe it's sort of more. I think there's huge room to change it. It's all the stuff that I like. It's on board draw in a format where the game is slower. We're getting more turns, more opportunities to use that on board draw. Gholdengo, pretty rough. Bolt, pretty rough. But actually looking at the rest of that format and the ability to have your outrage response double up the damage that's on you, seems pretty strong into the top of the format. So it would be one of my ones to watch. I would put it sort of somewhere between A and B. But again, this is your list, your call, and it's interesting that I seem to be a little bit more positive on it.
You are a little bit more positive on this one. I feel it may be a little bit lower down, but as it is an owner's Pokemon, and I do love it on this channel, I will potentially put it just at the end of B tier. I think it's well balanced. A very good one, and it's nice to actually see some of the owners' Pokemon compete, and they are pretty much just on B tier except Mine's Grimmsnarl. I feel like that never really counts, doesn't go into the owners sort of thing, but still very, very powerful. But now the last one here is a deck which has had so much hype going into this sort of format. Lots of people talk, and that is Crustle, stopping anything damage from all box Pokemon. Do we think this could be the undisputed S tier archetype? Could we put it down as absolutely terrible and put it in D tier, and people are just going to tech around this? Because it has some great matchups for certain ones. Some things to mention right now is like some Gholdengo. Gholdengo can have its single price attacking options, but Crustle can instantly respond to them straight away by one hit KOing them. And now suddenly you have to have another turn to try and power up. And Crustle could just go with a Churro, pick it up, promote a fresh one, and go that way. When we think about other decks like Dragapult, they can play some single price of archetypes. They have because I don't believe Crustle stops the spreading damage counters, correct? So I think so you can just sit there, spread out some damage counters. You have Monkey Dory, so if they're attacking into you, you can just move it all back. Gardevoir, but it has single price attacking options. You can have a good one into that one. Raging Bolt has the some luck. So you can just play a Koraidon, just hit that Bellow Thunder, hit a Koraidon, 180 damage. Meaning want to chuck a jamming tower in, which we're seeing Raging Bolt play two of to get rid of the hero escape. So there are ways around how the top decks can really play around this.
Mm.
But against one of the most popular decks, most hyped one against like Gholdengo, it has an absolute field day against this. So I'm in a torn between could this be an A tier archetype or could this be down there in B, C, or D? As
I
you're the one competing, I'm gonna let you think about that.
Oh, I'm throwing it hard and D. I'm so sorry. Look, I think a lot of people have sort of drawn the comparison. I did it myself actually. That's what's going to be the Iron Thorns this year? What's the thing that sort of left me all big? This ain't it. And I think it was kind of noticeable that Thorns did more interesting and more oppressive things than Crustle does. Crustle kind of just sits there and look, don't get me wrong, it's a very important floodgate function. It's something that we've had in the game where having, a wall of some description, it stops greedy deck building, it keeps people honest. And I think this is one of the themes that Gholdengo is. It's a pretty greedy deck, actually, in terms of the profile of the attackers. Yes, you've got your 1/1 sizer potentially, but actually, yeah, if they're keeping a tight bench, which they should as Crosshall, it's not doing that much and they can gust things up. So, like, it's got some fantastic matchups on paper, but actually, I think if you look at it, the field as a whole, and particularly that awful, awful, no good Gardevoir matchup where they can just walk over you, it wouldn't be my pick. And I think it does belong in D tier. Someone will take it, someone will YOLO it, someone will say, do you know what? If I show up and if I get the right matchups, that could be my path towards a very, very deep run. I say good luck to them. Um, be courageous and maybe not in a good way. I'll live to regret that, I'm sure, when I lose to it.
If you're playing Gholdengo, you go to that, yeah, to let us know. So that is the tier list, and I'm actually pretty happy with this one, with S tier being Gardevoir and Dragapult Dusknoir, A tier being Gholdengo, Dragapult, minus Grimmsnarl, Raging Bolt, B, Ethan Typhlosion, Gardevoir, Jellicent, Poltzard, and Zoroark, C being Flareon Box, Charizard, Miraidon, and Joltic Box, and finally in the D tier being Toedscruel, Crustle, as well as also Armarouge. I think this is a good representation about what to expect for Worlds. Like, I think definitely be preparing with Dragapult going back to the Dusknoir build, which is quite I see that's going to be the best one. Gardevoir without the Jerson, as we've kind of discussed, is seeming a lot bit better on paper. And of course, the big hype deck talked about on the channel, talked a lot about, and if you've been online, you know it's the most popular deck. Gholdengo is definitely you're going to be facing a few of them there. It's very, very powerful. It's basically is the new Regidrago. We're not going to see any more advanced in Japan. They've got Mega Evolution, so it's all built on our online sort of tournament. And that's exactly where Regidrago came in to shine to be the powerhouse that it became for like 8 months in our entire format. So I think this is a good sort of representation. Any sort of closing thoughts that you have right now in the world sort of format going it forward?
To be honest, I think that whilst we're identifying a couple of decks here as S tier, frankly, they could be A tier. And actually, this is a different way of looking at what S tier is. Like, they really dominate and stand out. Like, they're very good. I think they'll be very well played. I think they've got very well rounded answers to everything. But actually, this is one of the good things about the format at the moment. We don't have an all dominating deck in my mind, that things can be well checked. And what's been really interesting to sort of see with my own preparation in these past weeks is just the swell of hype and excitement that will follow one deck and then will die away, and trying to make sure that within the hype cycle you're a little bit ahead of it, rather than responding to what happened a week ago. That's going to be one of the keys for Worlds this year if you are looking to metagame effectively. So that's my take home.
Definitely. And the most important thing is, say Worlds is tomorrow, you can sleeve up one deck. As of right now, well, I'll give you two. We can have a great deck and a runner-up. Which ones are you sleeving?
Oh, I mean, you know what I've been practicing with. Um, I have played God of War an awful lot this year, and I think it would be a very natural choice. I have played Gholdengo at tournaments this year, and I've really enjoyed it. I think it's the deck that gains the most And it comes down to a pretty straight trade-off of, do I want the thing that has, get to play every game and have the greatest possible skill expression, or do I go for the deck that is an absolute powerhouse that is really consistent? That, do you know what? If I face that dreaded Crustle, then maybe I get to have an early lunch. So it's a trade-off, and if I do make that trade-off and it doesn't work out, I won't be complaining because I knew what I was doing.
Perfect. I mean, if I was going, I would play Feast and Social. It's a fun deck. Or I would be twisting my arm around to go back to playing Dragapult Dusknoir, as I played a lot of that this season. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's been quite fun, let's say, chatting about talking about the tier list. And thank you again, Justin, for coming on the channel to speak about it. He's obviously been on the channel a lot with all of the testing videos we've done. So we've got one already been out, and hopefully there'll be another one out next week. So before we say goodbye, where can people find you, Justin, on socials or anywhere else?
Oh, if you search for, I think it's Justin Parable is my Twitter username. Yes, I do not have quite the social presence that you do necessarily, Charlie, but yeah, feel free to drop a follow. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Also, good luck at Worlds, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.
Bye.